Hi, Dr. Carlos Todd here, and welcome to another episode of How to Fight Less, Love More. So what are we talking about today? What we're talking about is this question of why is it that I seem to get angry over small things, over nothing? So this is a question I get a lot over the years as I've worked with many angry people. And this question comes up because they've made promises to themselves, they've made promises to others that they're going to not have an episode, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happened. And they find themselves in this situation where they're asking questions like, why am I reacting this way? Why is there something wrong with me? Why do I have such an impulsive and this strong response over something that seems to be nothing? And the answer is kind of found in many possible reasons why this could be occurring. I think the first thing that you want to consider is that it's usually really not about something small. On the surface, it looks like something small. It might be the dishes, it might be a comment that somebody made, it might be being interrupted, right? It may be somebody not texting back or responding to you, right? Something you see on social media, right? Those things seem like nothing. But in reality, there is something going on in the background. And as long as you remember that on the face of it, it's a small thing, but really it's not nothing. There's something going on behind. Then come in a place where you're able to translate that what seems like a small thing into an understanding that there's some kind of deeper issue going on that you really need to pay attention to. Resentment, emotional exhaustion, right? Pressure, disappointment, fear, right? Those are not small things. The surface thing, the thing you see is a small thing, but the thing behind it is really not small, right? And this is something that I see with couples. There's resentment kind of going on, right? But they don't know to call it resentment. If the dishes aren't washed, right? Or your partner doesn't seem to be organized or something like that. They leave their clothes somewhere or something like that. I mean, that now looks like a small thing, but behind it is a larger issue, right? People are overloaded at work, right? People are feeling not emotionally supported in their relationship, as they go through something. Again, the thing on the surface is a small thing, but these things are, the underlying issues are not small. So that's the first thing to consider. You're really not dealing with small things. The second thing to consider is that small triggers often touch on some deeper wound that is occurring. And so to my earlier point, I think you want to consider that there are deeper wounds that are occurring that really need to be paid attention to. Deeper wounds like not being interrupted, right? Feels like disrespect. Being ignored really feels like you're being rejected. Criticism or being criticized triggers that feeling of shame. And that's something that I know that happens to me sometimes, right? Getting criticism from someone and I can feel that sense of shame that sets in. So it really is about understanding what is going on in the background. This is why two people who have the same experience can have very different responses to those experiences. Because it's not really the event, it's really the emotional interpretation of the event that one has to consider. And where does this stuff come from, right? It comes from childhood experiences, right? A parent who was rejecting, who didn't pay attention, right? You pulled on their leg, mommy, and they just really never paid attention to you. And then you learn that people really don't care about me or my needs. And that can leave some deep scars or emotional wounds for a person. Previous relationships that people have had, and this is something that I see a lot in my work. People have previous relationships that really did not work out well, and that left a scar that is really hard to break or to get past. People feeling invisible. I think one of the hardest things to do is to feel in this big world as irrelevant, right? Nobody really cares about me. Nobody's interested in me. That's kind of messed up. And so I sometimes talk about this idea that there are two types of death, right? There's the death of, you're cremated or you're buried somewhere, right? You're gone. And there's also the death of irrelevance, right? The death of nobody seems to care that I exist. You look around and nobody cares. Or that feeling that nobody cares. That can spark an angry response. So really understanding that piece, I think, is really important. What is the third point? The third point here is chronic stress. Dealing with stress, right? So remember, we're talking about small things that potentially, why is it that I get triggered by small things, right? Why is it that I respond in this way, right? So chronic stress over work, stress over finances, stress over parenting, stress over social media, which is a big one, right? You go in there and everybody seems to be doing well. Everybody seems to be doing better than I am, right? So that can trigger stress, right? A lot of people in this society are not sleeping well. And the lack of sleep is something that is really supposed to help repair and restore. You get up the next day and you're ready for the world. Your mind is a lot clearer. And if you're not getting enough sleep, it's going to impact your perception of things. And it's also going to potentially impact your bandwidth, right? How much you can handle during the day before you potentially snap. And then relationship tension. There are a lot of people who live in situations in relationships where they are constantly at war with their partner. Not fun, and that has its own implications too. So when stress levels stay high for too long, your tolerance goes down. The higher the stress, the lower your emotional tolerance. I like to say sometimes that the more stressed you become, the more self-protective, the more hyper-vigilant you become for threats. The patience gets thinner and your reactions become stronger and faster. So you want to be able to pay attention to things like burnout, decision fatigue. You're making decisions around work, around parenting, around finances, around who knows what. And all these decisions coming at you, that also can be a source of chronic stress. The emotional exhaustion of decision making, the emotional exhaustion of having too many things coming at you. The individual pressures of being a man, the individual pressures of being a woman, those things also can play a role in why is it that I snap? Why is it that I seem to be triggered by very small things? What is point number 4? Point number 4 is the body reacts before your thinking does. So this is kind of a really, really interesting one, right? One of the reasons why anger feels so uncomfortable is because your body reacts before your rational brain can really catch up. Your nervous system, and I tell clients this all the time, that many of us, we don't pay attention to what's happening in our body. And so you have this situation where something occurs and your body picks up on it. Somebody does something that irritates you, or you're tired or something like that, and your heart rate is a little bit higher, or if you have that tension in your back, your shoulders, and your body is keeping the score. It's funny the way how the brain works is that the brain and body is that you will have a physical reaction to things that you can ignore or not realize, and then your brain tends to like take a situation that maybe, say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no stress or stress reaction, and 10 being a very stress reaction. Your brain can take a situation that's actually at 8 or 9 and kind of pull it down to a 4 so that you can keep going, right? So the big intensity of that loss or the stress of the job, right? In your mind, you start to kind of pull it down in such a way that it doesn't impact you as much. So you can keep going, so you can get up and go to work because you got to feed your family, you got to take care of your responsibilities. So that's something I think is also an important point to consider, that when your brain does that numbing thing, bringing the 8 or 9 down to a 4, then you have to be able to manage that, I think, a little bit better and realize that your body is keeping the score, right? So that pain that you have in your neck, your back, your shoulders, you may have to do a massage, you may have to do some stress management thing to help you respond a little bit differently in situations before that physical response leads you to a place where you're constantly responding to things that are problematic. The other thing is considering that the anger is often covering up another emotion. I think I covered this in an earlier point, but I want to stress this particular thing. For many people, anger is easier felt. It's an emotion that's felt a little bit easier than being vulnerable, right? So for example, you have your partner, you plan that you guys are gonna have a date or something like that, and you said, hey, I want us to be ready by 5 o'clock. The partner is ready by 5:30, 6 o'clock, right? And you have reservations and all that, and you get pretty annoyed, right? Why is it that you get pretty annoyed? The annoyance is partially coming from anger. You feel anger, but the annoyance is really coming from being disappointed. You're really looking forward to spending that time. You're feeling stress, you're feeling disappointment, and it's hard to express, hey, I'm really disappointed that we weren't able to leave at a good time. It's easier to say, what's wrong with you? you always do this. But I think learning how to express the real emotions, the deeper emotion, can help you manage some of those small explosions that can come. People feel stronger, more powerful when they express anger, as opposed to saying I'm hurt, I feel rejected, I feel overwhelmed. It doesn't really seem to work as well. But learning how to express vulnerability could actually save your life. The better you get at being able to express vulnerable feelings, the better you're going to be able to manage stress. And the funny thing about stress is that stress releases adrenaline and cortisol, and these hormones actually lower your immune function. So if you're constantly having these being triggered by small things, the problem becomes that you're lowering your ability to fight disease. And we already know that people who are constantly angry or annoyed are very, very prone to illness, heart disease, cancers, flu, colds, that kind of stuff. So being able to manage your stress is extremely important. So what can you do to help? And I'll cover this broadly in some other videos, but I want to kind of give you some pointers to consider when it comes to dealing with things that this idea of being triggered by these small issues that come up, and this idea of being angry over nothing, what seems like nothing. But hopefully, if you've watched this video this far, you realize that it's really not nothing. The goal is not to become someone who never feels anger. I mean, that's unrealistic. I mean, you want to be able to, everybody gets angry. That's not the issue. The goal here is to understand the patterns, to slow down your reaction. Because one of the things that I've heard from many clients over the years is this idea that I did explosive thing, and now I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I respond to my kids this way? Why did I respond to my partner this way? Why did I say that thing to my boss? So now I don't have a job, don't have a partner, and my children are afraid of me, right? So the costs are high. So being able to slow your reactions, learning how to regulate your emotions first by paying attention to your physical body. Always remember that the body keeps the score. The body tells you what's going on, and then ultimately be able to communicate differently. This starts with awareness. So as opposed to you did this to me, you're learning how to be a lot more aware. Paying attention to what triggers you, when it happens, what emotional meaning is attached to this, and I talked about this earlier in this video, because once you understand the pattern, then you can begin to make change. You can do some of this stuff by starting to journal, right? When this incident happened, what was I feeling in my body, right? What physical response did I have? What did it mean? And doing therapy is another way to go through the same sequence. What is this feeling? What is it that triggered me? What was going on in my body? What does this all mean? And then how do I respond? How do I slow my response into the future? Learning breathing techniques. Learning simple techniques like 4-4-4. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Seems like a nonsense thing to do, but I think is particularly helpful. And then the other piece is being able to pause before reacting. Being able to put yourself in a position where you can not be overtaken by your emotions, but be able to pause. When you find yourself getting angry over small things over and over again, you just don't focus on the anger. Ask yourself, what is happening underneath? What stress am I carrying? What emotional patterns are repeating themselves? This is where change begins. Change begins with awareness. It's very simple, but in many ways not easy. If you want to develop emotional control and understand your anger patterns more deeply, click the link below. We have a course on masteringanger.com that really kind of helps you with that. So masteringanger.com, click the link below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.